In this video, I am going to be sharing with you a great example of how the VA failed a veteran and why they initially denied his claim and how he submitted an excellent higher level review letter. And when it came time for that interview of a higher level review, the interviewer didn't even the interviewer immediately told him he was approving his claim because he wrote such a good letter explaining the faults of the VA, but allowed the veteran to have his time in sharing how the VA failed this veteran. And I'm going to share this with you right now. So let's get right into it. So here we go. So here is a decision letter for a veteran. This veteran put in for TMJ secondary to PTSD. This is his original decision letter in denying him TMJ secondary to PTSD. Here we go. Reason for the decision: service connection TMJ as secondary to already service connected disability of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, here we go. Service connection may be granted for a condition diagnosed after military discharge, provided evidence establishes that the condition was caused by service. Service connection may be granted on the basis for disability related to toxic exposure activity. These are some things that I think the VA just puts in there sometimes because there was no toxic exposure. So there really shouldn't have been any of this added on this decision letter, because then it goes on to talk about more about toxic exposure. So there really wasn't no reason to include this in this decision letter because this had nothing to do with toxic exposure, right? And it's under the reason why the VA denied a claim, which is really interesting. Right here it goes: service connection may be granted for a disability which began in military service or was caused by some event or exposure in service. Of course. Now, service connection may be granted for a disease or injury which resulted from a service-connected disability or was aggravated thereby. The evidence does not show that TMJ is related, right, to the service-connected condition of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's saying that TMJ, there is no connection between TMJ and PTSD, nor is there any evidence of this disability during military service. Now, one of the things that the veteran we submitted was his exposure to now he already is service connected for PTSD. Now, we submitted also witness statements of him going through bombings and having issues as a result of those experiences. Excuse me. So he had some already connection, which could have been post-traumatic stress disorder. However, with jaw and injuries and these sorts of things, it was included in this claim, just so that you're aware, because this is going to come up later on. Now, a secondary grant of service connection requires, and this is the most important in this situation because secondary fall under different, right here, 38 CFR 3.310. These are secondary conditions. And this is really important when you're thinking about secondary conditions and how they are approved. Now, secondary grant of service connection requires medical evidence of a current disability. That means you got to have a diagnosis, right? You got to have a diagnosis, a medical evidence of a current disability right now. 2, a service-connected primary disability, meaning, of course, it's secondary, so you got to have a primary disability. In this case, it would be PTSD. Now, medical evidence of a nexus link between the current claim and disability, or current claimed disability and service-connected disability. This veteran had a nexus letter from a doctor who connected PTSD and TMJ. There is many research literature that connects the two. So there was no problem with that whatsoever, right? So let's continue. So here is the most important, and let me read this to you specifically. Mind you, let me pause here for a second. This veteran had a DBQ for a TMJ. He went to a specialist or a dentist who specialized in helping people with TMJ. This veteran had his jaw examined, and the doctor did a whole examination. He put different things in his mouth to bite on each side to indicate when the teeth were hitting. He looked at his mouth and how his mouth moved up and down. And then he felt the popping and could see the popping on the side of the veteran's jaw. And then he also put a ultrasound on each side of the veteran's jaw, measured how wide or open the veteran can open his mouth and move it side to side. The TMJ, the dentist, did a thorough exam on this veteran for TMJ. So there was already a DBQ approved, or a DB signed off with codes of, I think it was like 5 or 6 different things, maybe about 4 or 5 different things, filled out completely, where the veteran complained about pain in his jaw, getting headaches, these sorts of things, bruxism, all these things. This veteran happened to go to a TMJ specialist by happen chance. He happened to be someone who worked at a veterans hospital before, and just happened to know and was willing to help this veteran, and filled out a DBQ completely. If you've ever seen a TMJ DBQ, it's, I think, 4 or 5 pages, and the dentist put in the ICD codes. He put in all the information. So when this veteran submitted the claim, he provided this DBQ and a Nexus letter where the doctor connected the PTSD, the TMJ, related it to the veteran being diagnosed with TMJ by the VA many years ago, and a consistency of the veteran complaining of pain in his jaw. Now, there's a big gap between the veteran submitting a claim for PTSD and TMJ, and this is an important thing to note, where oftentimes, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it, where someone should have seen that this veteran was diagnosed with TMJ many years ago, and that there's this consistency of the veteran complaining about jaw pain, being diagnosed with bruxism, and then, of course, present time, the veteran goes to a TMJ specialist, gets diagnosed with TMJ, gets a DBQ completed, and a Nexus letter with medical research backing the doctor's reason of connection of the veteran's history, medical history of having pain in his jaw, having bruxism, and being diagnosed with TMJ. Then the doctor backed it up by the latest research of connecting TMJ with PTSD. So now I'm going to show you something where the VA failed this veteran, which caused the veteran to then submit a higher level review. And then because the veteran submitted a solid higher level review letter, that when the VA higher level review interviewer interviewed this veteran, the higher level review interviewer said, I just want, right from the very beginning, I just want to let you know that I'm approving your claim, but I'm going to give you your time to shine and let you speak in whatever you want to share with me and go from there. But this was only because the veteran knew, the veteran submitted a solid claim from the very beginning. And there should not have been a CMP exam based on the fact that the DBQ was completed by a medical professional. With full credentials, there should not have been a CMP exam ordered for this veteran. However, the veteran was denied, and I'm going to share with you why. Here we go. The VA examiner, the CNP examiner, not a TMJ specialist, opinioned that the claim condition of TMJ is less likely than not. Likelihood is less than approximately balanced or nearly equal, approximately due to the result of the veteran service connected condition, post-traumatic stress disorder. This right here is the most important. This right here is the VA stating, right here. This right here is the VA is stating, oh, and a more important note, the examiner was a nurse practitioner. So the VA is taking the opinion of a nurse practitioner over a dentist, a professional licensed dentist. Right here. Now, the veteran was noted with TMJ on primary care or PCP notes, primary care no, I'm drawing a blank. Notes dated. Yeah, I'm just drawing a blank. Let's drive on here. Dated back in September 2015. The veteran was noted on objective exam with symptoms of decreased mouth opening, jaw pain, and clicking sound on the right side. The VA examiner noticed all of this, right? The condition of TMJ is caused by injuries, teeth grinding, arthritis, muscle imbalance, poor posture, and misaligned bite. The veteran is service connected for PTSD since 6/2013. He stated having symptoms of grinding teeth, clenching jaw with nervous and anxiety from PTSD, although there is an association between teeth clenching, jaw and bracing and stress. This examiner did not find medical literature to support. Now, here's one of the most important things right here. The examiner did not find medical literature to support a causal relationship between PTSD and TMJ. If you're watching this and you understand what I'm sharing, because we submitted. Now, first off, the nurse practitioner is basically stating there is no medical literature connecting PTSD with TMJ. That right there is huge. Two, this person is basically saying that there is no causal relationship, like literally making a statement that is completely false, right? And remember, the VA is taking this person's opinion more than the TMJ specialist, right? Stick with me. Now, a thorough review of medical, I should have kept going. Look at this. A thorough review of medical literature failed to demonstrate a causal relationship. For this reason, a nexus has not been established. I'm going to show you here in a minute that this is absolutely false. It's saying a thorough review. You could go on Google right now and type in PTSD, TMJ. You're going to find something. You don't have to dig into any major medical journals. You're going to find it. So that right there is a huge red flag. Now, get this. Here we go. Service connection is for temporary TMA is denied since there is no evidence that claim condition is. So stick with me here. The evidence does not show an event, disease, or injury in service. The service connection for TMJ is denied since this condition neither occurred in nor was caused by service. They're saying it wasn't caused by service. Now remember, this is a secondary condition. Secondary conditions do not follow primary. There are other rules, and I think it was 38 3 something. I can't move up because it'll show some private information, but let's continue here. Your service treatment records do not contain complaints, treatment, or diagnosis for this condition. Let's read that sentence real quick, because look what this just says. The veteran up here, right here, the veteran was noted with TMJ in medical notes back 2015. This is 10 years ago. And down here, it's saying your service treatment records do not contain complaints, treatments, or diagnosis for this condition. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a decision letter from the VA itself, right? We did not find a link between your medical condition and military service. And then it goes on to talk about more toxic exposures. Why are toxic exposures being discussed on a claim that is not referring to anything about toxic exposures? Right here, you were, and it acknowledges, yes, the veteran, right? The veteran was exposed to environmental hazards and participated while serving in Southwest Asia. You've been diagnosed with a disability. And let me pause it here to see if I can move down a little bit more. All right. Your VA examiner and the evidence of record confirms your diagnosis of TMJ. Where did they get that from? They're acknowledging, yet they're saying there is no history. There is no treatment records that do not contain complaints, treatment, or diagnosis for this condition. Incredible, right? Let's pause it and keep going. All right. It just then ends with the claim, primary disability is service connected, the primary, and you are service connected for post-traumatic stress disorder, this veteran, right? So now let me share with you. Thank you. I know many people have talked about my videos are long, and there are people who want me to get to the point, but these are very important points. And for those of you who are sticking with me, I appreciate it. So let's continue. So now, here is the letter that was submitted immediately after the denial of TMJ by the VA. Here we go. To whom it may concern, I'm requesting a reversal of the prior denial of my claim for service connection for temporary TMJ, right? This veteran right here is stating, I am requesting a reversal for TMJ secondary to PTSD. I respectfully request that this claim be adjudicated today based solely on the evidence currently in record, right? With the higher level review, you can't submit, or you're not submitting new information. That's a supplemental claim. Now, so with this, it's just saying, look at everything I gave you. You guys have failed and used a favorable, or you used the opinion of a nurse practitioner above a qualified medical professional. Let's continue. I respectfully request that this claim be adjudicated today based solely on evidence currently on the record without initiating a duty to assist error or returning the claim to the rating activity, as this would cause unnecessary delay. Favorable evidence submitted. According to my claim was supported by the following evidence, all of which meets VA standards for competent, credible, and probative medical evidence. Here we go. A fully completed DBQ completed by a licensed TMJ specialist, which confirmed a diagnosis of TMJ, range of motion, jaw pain, and functional impairment. A Nexus letter, right? So for those that are watching, right, sometimes even with the Nexus letter, claims get denied. A Nexus letter from a licensed medical doctor who clearly stated that my TMJ condition is more likely than not caused or aggravated by my service-connected PTSD, right? For this case, this veteran, right, already had service-connected PTSD. The physician provided a clear and reasoned explanation linking PTSD-related bruxism, jaw clenching, and chronic stress to the development of TMJ. The Nexus letter also included peer review. Look at this. When the VA rater was looking at the VA rater, they didn't even take in consideration that in that Nexus letter, there was actual peer-reviewed medical research that establishes an acceptable relationship between PTSD and TMJ, supporting the physician's conclusion. This physician didn't just write a letter and said, more likely than not, the veteran has this because of this. No, he used medical peer-reviewed research to back what he was saying, right? Kind of reminds me in graduate school, you can't just make a claim, you've got to have proof behind it, right? And the veteran concluded a personal statement describing how his PTSD has led to constant jaw tension, clenching, and pain, which later resulted in diagnosis of TMJ. And in addition, remember, none of this, and this is an important part, veteran, a supporting statement from a spouse who witnessed the veteran's TMJ symptoms and the impact in my daily life. If you would go back and you would see none of this in the reason for the decision, none of this was included. So this veteran submitted a statement from his wife, his own personal statement. When you look at the letter for the decision, the reason for the decision, none of this was included. The doctor's letter, the personal statement from the veteran himself, and a statement from his wife. None of this was taken in consideration. Literally failed this veteran right here. These pieces of evidence, both medical and lay, should have been fully considered, right, under 38 CFR 3.159 A1 and A2. However, neither the veteran's personal statement nor, let's pause this and get to let's make sure no personal information is revealed. All right, let's continue. His wife's statement was not addressed in the decision, which constitute a failure on the VA's part to consider competent lay evidence. Let's continue. Despite the submission of this evidence, the veteran's claim was denied based on the VA examiner's opinion that no literature exists linking PTSD and TMJ. Saying the VA examiner's opinion that no literature exists between PTSD and TMJ, that was absolutely false, right? This statement was inaccurate as literature was submitted and cited in the record. The VA examiner also failed to address or refute the detailed findings and rationale provided in the private Nexus letter. They completely didn't even look at that information. Let's continue. Legal errors and contradictions in the VA decision. Failure to apply precedent decisions. Board of Veterans Appeal decision in VetRIP, these right here, all granted service connection for TMJ secondary to PTSD. This is what you get, veterans, when you work with me. This type of things, all this stuff that I'm sharing with you have been as a result in working with me, right? So all these right here, VetApp, secondary to PTSD, nearly identical fact patterns. The veteran had PTSD, experienced bruxism and jaw clenching, and provided medical or lay evidence linking those behaviors to TMJ. These decisions acknowledge that PTSD-related bruxism and tension can lead to TMJ, even when no, excuse me, when no in-service TMJ diagnosis exists. Remember, this is a secondary condition. It's not a primary condition. In this case, I presented the same kind of medical and factual evidence. By denying my claim under these conditions, the VA failed to apply clear and consistent precedent that supports service connection for TMJ and secondary to PTSD. It's saying you've got to follow, there's these same issues where veterans were approved for TMJ secondary to PTSD. Now, let's continue. The VA ignored its own favorable findings. In the denial letter, the VA confirmed the following. He had a current diagnosis of TMJ. He is service-connected for PTSD. He had symptoms of jaw clenching and teeth grinding related to PTSD. And he has clinical symptoms of jaw pain, clicking, and reducing mouth opening. These three elements, current diagnosis, service-connected primary condition, and a medically supported connection between the two, here's the thing, are the core, now this is very important, veteran, are the core criteria for secondary service connection, which falls under, right here, 38 CFR 3.310. Each of these criteria was met and acknowledged in the VA's own decision, yet the claim was still denied. Here we go. Over-reliance on a flawed VA Nexus opinion. The VA examiner acknowledged an association between stress and jaw clenching, but dismissed the connection between PTSD and TMJ by stating there was no supporting literature. This is incorrect. Literature was submitted by the claim. Furthermore, board of decisions such as Vet App 99 was granted secondary service connection based on similar evidence, even in the absence of cited journal articles, by relying on clinical observations, medical reasoning, and credible lay evidence. Now, here's the thing. Look at this. This is important, veteran. Under 38 CFR 3.159C4 and MEM 21-1 guidelines, VA must not request a CMP exam when a sufficient private medical evidence has been submitted. This is important right here, veteran. And I know this is almost 30 minutes long, but if you've stuck with me, I know I'm sharing with you some very good information, and I appreciate you taking the time to read and, more important, to learn from this. The CMP exam should not have been conducted, and its findings should not have outweighed the favorable evidence provided. The VA ordered a redundant CMP exam, which it then used, look at this, which it then used to dismiss the veteran's favorable evidence. This directly contradicts VA policy and case law. Failure to consider competent lay evidence. The record includes both personal statement from the veteran and supporting statement from his spouse describing the observed onset and progression of the TMJ symptoms and related to PTSD. These pieces of evidence, both medical and lay, should have been fully considered under these regs. However, neither was addressed in the decision, which constitute a failure to consider competent lay evidence. This right here is why it's important to have lay statements, buddy statements, statements from wives, husbands, partners, significant others who have seen you in what you're dealing with. Now, let's continue. Regulatory and legal violations. Right here, violation of these two, duty to obtain adequate evidence. 38 CFR 31 or 3.159C4 states that the VA should not request a medical examination or opinion. Right here, look at this. 38 states the VA should not request a VA examination or opinion, right? Or opinion when there is already sufficient competent medical evidence on file to decide the claim. The regulation outlines that such evidence must include a current diagnosis, a medical nexus, and supporting rationale. All three All three components were provided in the original submission via a completed DBQ and his accompanying Nexus letter authored by a qualified medical professional. Therefore, the VA decision to schedule a C&P exam was inconsistent with this regulation. That is powerful right there, ladies and gentlemen. Now, violation of VA Education Manual M21-1. According to VA's own adjudication procedure found in M21-1, Part 3, Subpart 4, Chapter 5, Section A, Paragraph 3C, this is what you get from me, my friends. The VA may not order a C&P examination when private medical evidence is adequate for rating purposes. The DBQ and Nexus letter all met all requirements outlined in the VA manual and were sufficient for adjudication. Ordering an additional exam in this context violated VA procedural guidance. Let me underline that for you. Right? This is so important. Right here. The VA manual and right here, ordering an addition exam in this context violated VA procedural guidance. Outstanding, right? Let's continue. Now, as you see, this is a pretty long letter. This is a higher level review, and this is what should be submitted when submitting a higher level review. This type of letter right here should be submitted when somebody has when there is a denial that shouldn't be denied, right? So I know we're going on 30 minutes. If you're with me, I appreciate it, but this is great information, and I hope that you appreciate going over this as well. So here are some more cases, right? The court held the probative value of medical opinion depends on its reasoning, not its source. The private physician provided a detailed rationale supported by medical literature and principles. In contrast, the VA examiner issued a cursory opinion that failed to meaningfully engage with the submitted evidence, citing a broad denial of supporting literature without justification, despite literature being submitted alongside the Nexus letter. A medical journal article is not required under the law if a logical and medical sound explanation is present. In this case, the VA defaulted to an unsupported dismissal. Next, Collin and Derwinski. In Collin, the court ruled that the VA cannot reject favorable medical evidence without providing independent medical evidence to the contrary, which means if you submit medical evidence, it can't just be denied just because it wants to be denied. There's got to be without providing independent medical evidence to the contrary. In my case, the VA dismissed, or in the veteran's case, the VA dismissed the favorable private Nexus letter and medical literature without rebutting it with equivalent medical analysis or evidence. Instead, the VA improperly relied on a generalized and unsupported VA examiner opinion. This constitutes a violation of Collin and reflects an impermissible submission of VA judgment over competent medical expertise. Let's continue. The summary of procedural misconduct. The ordering of VA C&P exam in this case was unnecessary and appears to have been used solely to undermine favorable private evidence, contrary to law and regulation. This reflects a failure, right? This reflects a failure to follow 38 CFR 3.159, adhere to M21-1 adjudication and manual guidance, and respecting binding precedent in Collin and Neves Rodriguez. The private medical evidence submitted was competent, credible, and sufficient. The VA had no legal basis to override it without providing substantiated, independent, and medically supportive justification. They can't just not use the information. The VA denial referenced 38 CFR 3.303 and 3.304, which governs direct service connection. Once again, veterans, this is important information. And here it is that secondary are governed by a different regs. The VA didn't reference these codes, which govern direct service connection. So these are service connection, and 38 CFR 3.131 is secondary conditions. The absence of TMJ complaints during service is irrelevant Look at this. The absence of complaints during service is irrelevant to a secondary claim, right? And here's the reason why. I mean, it secondary, like for example, PTSD, sleep apnea has been shown to be can be secondary to sleep apnea can be secondary to PTSD. Oftentimes, someone has PTSD. It may be years after being diagnosed with PTSD that someone is then diagnosed with sleep apnea, but there is a connection between sleep apnea and PTSD. So they don't fall under the same regulations. So so for this claim, it was a secondary claim. They were following the primary rules. They were following this when they should have been going by this, right? And when you're working with the competent person, they will be able to look at this and see why it was denied and make sure that the information that was submitted, they used that information in addition to perhaps any CMP exams. And you didn't see any of those things in the decision section, their reason for their decision. So let's continue. All right, let's continue. So here we go. Supporting legal precedent. It states here these two cases, right, where you may not reject medical opinion without providing medical evidence of equal or greater probative value. No such contradictory evidence was provided in this case. And request for adjudication based on evidence of record. That's what a higher level review is, right? It's asking for this adjudicated today based on the current evidence, the DBQ, the private nexus opinion, and the medical research all satisfy the requirements for a secondary condition under 38 CFR 3.310. There is no need for additional development, and returning the case to the rating activity would only serve to delay a just outcome. So, in conclusion, the VA's denial was inconsistent with established law, precedent, and its own internal findings. The decision failed to give proper weight to favorable private medical evidence, relied on a flawed VA examination, and applied the incorrect legal standards. All three criteria for secondary service condition, right, are present in this record. Now, as I mentioned before, and I mentioned earlier, as a result, this is something that I've put together and can help. And this is a direct failure on the VA's part because they didn't do the right thing the first time. And this is why I have a little bit of issue of this whole claim about how claims are being processed and how many claims are being processed, because there are claims like this, which is recent and which is in those numbers of saying how many claims have been processed. There are denying veterans claims when they shouldn't be. In this decision letter, someone was referring to Tara that had to deal with toxic exposure, where this claim had nothing to do with toxic exposures. And this higher level letter, when it was time for the higher level review interview, the interviewer immediately stated, "I'm approving your claim." This person knew all those things, all the secondary condition rules and regulations, all the things that are required under a secondary condition, all these things, every single one, where the veteran didn't have to say anything when it came to the interview time for the higher level review. Now, that's so important because, and really, it was as a result of a powerful letter written for the higher level review showing how the VA failed this veteran. And so now it was approved and based off of evidence. And I continue to say this in my videos that all claims approved are evidence-based claims. You can't come in and get approved for nothing. You have to show evidence, and you have to have things it's going to be based off of evidence submitted. All right. So It's been 40 minutes. If you're still here, I appreciate it. This is a lot of good information. And I'd ask that you share this video with other veterans so that they see if in the event they are in a situation for a higher level review, this is the type of letter that it is needed and should be submitted after submitting for a higher level review. This was submitted using quick submit after the veteran, after we went on and submitted the higher level review online. And when it came time for the higher level review, which I recommend an interview, one wasn't needed, or the veteran didn't need to go into explanation as to why his claim was denied or his words, but the interviewer allowed him to say whatever he wanted, but knew that he was going to be approving the claim for the veteran. So please share this information with other veterans. And for those of you who like me to get to the point right away, this is something that it takes a little bit of explanation. And for those who like these longer explanation videos, thank you for sticking with me and share this video with other veterans. I'm certain it will help them in learning about what goes on in these results of the decision letter and what is required for a high level review. Once again, check out my video about evidence-based claims, and be sure to go and check that out if that's something you haven't seen. Thank you for your support, and check out that video next, and I'll see you in the next video.